In today's age of technology and AI, children, students, and adults all receive the answer within seconds. And to me, there lies a fundamental problem with this. When we obtain answers or advice directly before we can critically think about it, we are often led to a conclusion that may not have been ours in the first place. This influx of information that everyone has is the source of the problem. We are often guided to a conclusion rather than make our own. But if we allow ourselves time to critically think and to question the information, regardless if it's right or wrong, it gives us the chance to discover our own conclusions. Now, to clarify, this video is not about how news networks and or social media creators spread information. This video is about us as society to realize that we need to form our own conclusions rather than listen to other people and take their ideas. And this is especially important for people who are in teaching positions, people who coach other people, or people who are just sharing information in general. Like always, I like to give an example about what I mean so we can all be on the same page. Let's ask a question. Who do you think is the better cook? Number one, a person who follows a recipe to the exact measurements. Or, number two, a person who makes the same recipe but substitutes ingredients and seasonings to their taste and or for whatever they have at home. This example is to show the comparison between guided learning and freedom learning. The person who copied the recipe exactly will honestly end up with the better meal. But the problem is, did they actually understand what each component actually did? Did they understand why this specific ingredient was used? And do they understand why the meal tastes as good as it does? Probably not. But the person who made substitutions, who made it to their own liking, the one who adjusted the recipes for what they have at their home, they understood that the recipe has fundamental ingredients that they must use. But they also understood that these other ingredients could be exchanged for what they had at home. Connecting this back to my argument, the following words of others and taking their deductions and their conclusions as your own leads you into a place where you may not actually understand the principles behind it. Whereas a person who takes their time to think about what is said or learned and then applies it to their own lives will understand more of the core ideas of the topic. But let's take this time to understand the pros and cons of both, because there are pros and cons of both sides. Let's start with freedom learning. The pros of freedom learning are that you will develop a deeper understanding, that your problem-solving skills will grow exponentially, that your learning process that you went through can be transferred to other topics, that you become much more creative, and the information that you learn is much easier to memorize. Whereas the cons of freedom learning could be that it takes a lot longer, that bad habits may form, and that the amount of frustration and anger that you may end up having may cause you to give up entirely. Now let's talk about guided learning. The pros are you learn a lot quicker and way more efficiently. Bad habits or misconceptions are immediately corrected. You are less frustrated and less overwhelmed. And depending on the guide, the information is easier to digest. And finally, You can use all the collective information of the world to help you understand. Whereas the cons are, there's little to no critical thinking. You have a reduced understanding of the topic. You create a lack of exploration mindset, and you will have reduced creativity. Now that we've talked about the pros and cons of each, I'd really like to talk about struggling, the word struggling. Struggling to me is essential to learning. By pushing yourself to solve the problem on your own, you figure out the patterns of what makes the phenomenon occur. By getting used to failing and or making mistakes, you create a mindset where you're fine with asking questions about why something happened, what made it change, and what you may not account for, what you're missing. And for many learned experiences, knowing the steps to succeed is just the beginning. Your mind needs to connect to your body to actually learn. And not to mention that every person is slightly different. The way you take in information, the way you process it, the way you convey that to your body, and how you store that information are all completely different from person to person. Like I said, struggling is a fundamental part about learning, but when the answers are given to you directly and as easily as just picking up your phone and asking AI or Google, the engagement of the experience is significantly reduced. It's less memorable and it's less transferable. One thing that I always go back to, and before I continue with this section, I need to state that I have not looked at papers or studies to prove whether or not I'm right or wrong. But as a tutor and teacher, I have seen the reading ability and the reading comprehension of students continue to go down. And this isn't the first time some of you have heard this. Many teachers around the US country, at least, talked about this phenomenon and also agree with what I'm saying. I pin this fault on the rapid accessibility to information. I personally think that it's not that the kids can't read. They can absolutely read words. But what we mean is that they don't understand what the words mean. They have less of an ability to create the world of a story in their heads. They can't picture what's happening accurately. And they also don't like that the picture isn't fully completed. For the ones who read a lot of books here, you'll understand exactly what I mean. When you read a book, the images, the way the characters look, and the setting of the story are slowly being filled in your head. And the questions that you ask and wonder about will slowly be answered. But younger students don't like that feeling. They want the answer to immediately be there. They are so used to the fact that they're able to just go onto their phones or whatever device they have and type in the answer. The feeling of not knowing makes them upset and frustrated. So they end up hating reading. So what I'm trying to state here isn't that every student is bad at reading or that every student can't picture things in their head. It's not a 100% population. What I'm stating with absolute certainty, though, is that students have less reasons to practice mental generation of images compared to previous generations, which means that they have less practice and less stimulus to that specific part of their brain. With all this being said, I don't think we should completely go to unguided learning. That just doesn't make sense, and it's honestly completely detrimental to learning. But I think we have gone way too far on the guided side of learning. With the onset of AI and the access to information, answers are given to everyone, whether you're young or old, way too fast. This causes the many problems that I mentioned earlier. All of you guys know this, but almost all things in life take the best parts of many things and puts them together to create a better product. We need to guide people to the right direction, but we need to let them figure out the niche mechanics of the problem. We shouldn't force them to follow the line exactly. We just need to make sure that they don't veer off too far. We need to let them take turns. We need to let them go off course. It's what's going to inhibit a learning experience. We need to allow people to make mistakes and to struggle with their problems. But what I've noticed is that in this world, we are pushed to be perfect at every single stage of life. And this is why people are destined to be scared of failure. But to me, that's the exact opposite of perfection. To become perfect, we do have to make mistakes. To be the best versions of ourselves, we need to learn from our struggles. So, what I'd like to say is that don't mistake comfort as learning. You may feel productive when everything is going well, but the actual feeling of learning comes from frustration. It comes from confusion, and it's not fast. The moments of being lost and being challenged, those are the moments that your brain will be able to construct a deeper understanding of life. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. I must have said something that you liked. So maybe you could drop me a like and subscribe and follow my Twitch. I do gaming streams every weekday at night. I would appreciate a follow on there too. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.